You're unoriginal, stereotypical. Sorry, I'm cynical, but boy, you're criminal, and it's my bad if you're feeling blue.
Hey everyone, welcome to the newest episode of On That Note with Parker Whirling. Today's guest is an incredibly talented indie pop singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and producer based in Philadelphia. Her debut single, Unoriginal, came out May 20th, so it's hot off the press, and I'm really excited to have her on the show. Before we get started, please make sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts, and don't forget to follow me at Parker Whirling and at onthatnote_podcast on Instagram. And on that note, please welcome Splendi. Before we start the episode, I want to tell you guys about something new that I've been drinking called Up to Good. They're a sustainably minded brand making sparkling caffeinated drinks from upcycled cascara. If you don't know what cascara is, it comes from the exact same plant as coffee, where coffee beans are the seed and cascara is the fruit. This is what gives Up to Good its distinct tea-like flavor and also what naturally caffeinates it, which has been amazing for late-night writing sessions when I need a little boost without the jitters, you know? They offer 3 all-natural flavors: cascara mint, lemon ginger, and hibiscus berry. My personal favorite is the cascara mint that I have right here. If you want to check them out, they're on Instagram at uptogoodenergy or order from their site, uptogoodenergy.com. I'm sitting here with Splendi, an indie pop singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and producer based in Philadelphia. She just released her debut single called Unoriginal on May 20th. And I always like to start off these podcast episodes by asking about the writing and recording process. But because this is your debut single, I was really curious about your thoughts and feelings behind releasing your first song into the world. I know it can be a little nerve-wracking and also exciting. So could you take me through maybe your thought process going into putting this song out?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, the writing process alone is like a whole thing, but releasing it, I think, is way scarier than most people, maybe who aren't musicians, would imagine. Because I've always written like songs in my room, just very not seriously. And I started working with a producer who kind of just encouraged me to like send him some demos, and I did. And our session working together went really well, and he was like, you should like release some stuff. And I was like, I don't know, like a little hesitant. Definitely had to think about it, just because putting something out there, especially like a true story or something that's personal, is it's intimidating, right? Like it's very vulnerable, because you're sharing like a true story and just experience about yourself, aside from the fact that you're also like singing on it, and like whoever hears the song is like going to judge it for multiple things, like the music, the lyrics, your voice, everything. So it's just it's super intimidating, but like I'm glad that it's out. I think it's also really relieving to just have it out there and kind of like move on to the next thing, which is nice.
Yeah, you really touched on that really well. It is a very personal thing, and it's one thing to write these songs and sing them to yourself or whatever, but there's something about like the day before you release it, you almost have like a mini panic attack, because you're like, oh wait, everyone is now going to be part of this process. They're gonna see how I think and what I feel about things, and if it involves real people, then it gets a little heightened even more.
Definitely, yeah. But it's cool, because I mean, if you're honest and open, I feel like people can relate to the song or the stories, which some people have reached out and said that they do, which is like crazy to me, because I mean, that's just one of the good things about, I guess, being so open. So there's pros and cons for sure, but it's nice, like when you're writing the song, it's just this thing that's like personal to yourself, and you can kind of like cherish those moments with the song before you release it, and then it's like a whole different thing once it's out, and now maybe you know, you're like cherishing the moments where people appreciate the writing or the instrumental, or like they can relate to it. So it's definitely rewarding to finally release something, even if it's like super intimidating.
Right. That is the good stuff too. You know, it's that it is scary to put it out, but if it's scary, it means that there's some real heart in there, and that's what people gravitate towards. Nobody wants to listen to something that feels fake.
Totally.
So I'd imagine with any release, there's always some internal and external obstacles that present themselves along the way. For this song, can you think of anything that happened, whether that was just an external thing that made it hard to release it, or maybe just some internal pressures that came up?
Totally, yeah. I think it's always a combination of both. I think, like, you know, I wanted to write like an indie sort of diss track, and so that just flowed really naturally about like the first person that came to mind. So that, you know, once the song was done, I had to kind of come to terms with the fact that like, oh, he might hear this song, like people he knows might hear this song, and I might have to like deal with that down the road or whatever. But that was definitely one kind of internal conflict that was maybe keeping me from like wanting to release it, you know, but I eventually went through with it. It wasn't like a huge roadblock, but it was just kind of like, oh, like someone could hear the song that maybe I don't want to hear this song, which is just a struggle of releasing it. And then, I don't know, I'm also like a huge perfectionist, so that is always something that I think gets in the way of not releasing things fully, but just releasing things maybe in like a timely manner. Like that, you know, unoriginal could have been done like so much sooner had I not just been super nitpicky over a lot of stuff, which my producer probably gets like really frustrated with. But I think in the end, like we both think that it's worth it. So
that is a classic trait that I feel like a lot of artists I've interviewed have, of being a perfectionist, but knowing that and doing their best to shut it down so that when it's really time to, you know, call it on a song, they actually can release it instead of getting stuck in this feedback loop of looking for things that are wrong with it. For you, how did you end up getting out of that hole? Because the first song typically, I think, is the hardest one to overcome because it kind of is a statement, right? It's the first song you release.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, I just knew at a certain point that like I'm gonna just keep looking for things, and like I wanted to put the song out, you know, as all artists do. We don't want to like sit and, you know, be like, oh well, you know, the drums maybe should do this here in this bar, and then you know, so I had to just kind of be like, no, it's never gonna come out if like I just keep going to my producer with like, you know, different issues that aren't even issues. It's like such a thing that artists do. But yeah, I think, I don't know, I might start like limiting myself in the future to how many notes I can give, especially with mixes too. That's a big one. So yeah, I think like, you know, 2 or 3 batches and like mixes with revisions is like good, because at that point there's not much that's going to be noticeable to like the listener within all of the differences. So
right, we are our worst critic.
Yes.
So I read that you started out on drums and then you started switching to play guitar and singing. How was that transition?
That was tricky. I've definitely played everything for a while, but drums are totally my like primary instrument. I had a guitar lesson or two, you know, when I was like around 12 or 13 or something. So not sure how much I remember from those, but yeah, like just to write, I play guitar. So it's not much more than just some simple chords and whatnot. But for live shows, which I started doing, you know, like as Splendi, I have to kind of be singing up front and playing guitar. I definitely want to play drums on some songs in the future, but it's kind of like a weird thing to be like hidden in the back, and like live sound at a lot of smaller venues is not maybe what it should be. So like playing the drums and singing would definitely be an obstacle for that. So I kind of just settled on like, you know, playing rhythm guitar. I have someone who plays lead, and kind of just made it work. Like I practiced so much for the first show, which was also like on the release day, when Unoriginal came out. We played 2 shows that day, so that was a busy day. And yeah, I played The Adults Are Talking as like one of the covers on
No
guitar.
way.
That kills me. I mean, I play it like all right. There's some parts where, you know, I occasionally will mess up, but you know, for not like primarily being a guitarist, I'm cool with like how I've been playing. Still practicing, trying to get better, but
That's a great song.
Yeah, I love that song. But yeah, drumming's definitely where it's at. And I still love to like play drums live for people too. It's just a nice like break from my project.
There is something nice about playing drums because you kind of get to just chill in the back, and you're not all the focus is on you, but you are providing such a important part of the you know, important piece of the puzzle, I guess.
Totally. And like as long as you know the song structure, you can kind of just have fun with it. Like it's a good time, laid back. So yeah.
So during this process making Unoriginal, are there any lessons that you learned that you know you're definitely going to take with you into the next couple of releases?
Yeah, actually, I think it's about my writing process, because I have a really weird writing process, and for a long time during Unoriginal, and the next one that's about to come out, Nancy Drew, I was like, oh, this is like a horrible, you know, writing process. Like I gotta like find a better way. But I kind of learned through Unoriginal and this next one, like that's just what it works. So my writing process maybe isn't like the most time efficient, but it works for me. So, you know, instead of like trying to rework my brain and my writing process, I think I've just come to terms with like, no, this is the way I like to write and do it, and it works. So I think I'm just gonna keep doing it. But for a bit I was like in this mindset of like I gotta try and find different ways to write, and I like to mess around with different tools or like starters. I'm trying to start songs up, but yeah, I think what I do is I just do the whole stream of consciousness thing, and I like pick a concept and roll with it and try and like map out a full story. So from the start of the song to the end, I love artists that do that. I think it makes for a much more interesting like listening experience when, you know, hopefully the music is good, but also there's like a story in the lyrics too. So I'll write the concept out, and then I'll just write one-liners or like idioms that I think are cool and fit. And I get to like 10 pages on a document or in my notebook, and then I kind of just like put it on hold until I have an instrumental to go along with it. And then when I have an instrumental to go along with it, I kind of just like cut stuff out, because obviously like you rework the lyrics to fit the melodies, and so I kind of just have like a million ideas to choose from, which is cool being a perfectionist, because I like to have like as many options as possible. But it definitely is overwhelming at times doing it that way, which is why I was like I gotta change my writing process. But I think I'm gonna stick with it because I think it works.
I would imagine having to narrow down 10 pages of potential lyrics would get a little tedious after a while.
Yeah, and then there's some that you really like, but they just don't really fit, you know, once you're like structuring and formatting with the instrumental. But then I keep them and I save them for future songs. So like it kind of works. I just recycle them.
So speaking of future songs, I know you said you have a single, Nancy Drew, coming out. Is there anything you can tell us about that song, or maybe anything else you also have coming out in the future?
Totally. Yeah. Nancy Drew is a song about trust issues, and I guess just being lied to by partners or people throughout your life. And it's definitely a bit darker than Unoriginal, like tone-wise, sound-wise. It's very like synth heavy. There's like a crazy synth line throughout the song, and it's a bit more upbeat. but with like a darker feel. So it's like a kicking tempo. It's pretty fast. But I'm excited for that one to come out. After that one, I have one that's like totally finished, Lazy Bones, which is...
I'm loving these titles.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I thought it was like a fun name. I think I told someone that like I don't want to do anything that I don't want to, and I was like, oh, that could be a lyric, and I wrote it down, and then I kind of just structured this whole song that's basically about, which is also another true story, I just being depressed, and then maybe people who don't know like chalk it up to just being lazy, you know. I had like a horrible, I was an education major at Temple University, like here in Philly, and I had to do student teaching, and like I got placed, which was probably the worst person possible. I was in like a first grade classroom, and this woman was just like mean to the kids, like grabbing them by the face, like shoving them and stuff. Yeah, it was really bad. And that was a whole thing. But during that, like, you know, I think that kind of made my mental health decline a bit, like seeing that every day and being like, this is the field I'm going to go into with people like this. But yeah, and I was also just depressed. It was like the winter, and yeah, she had like told my my like supervisors for Temple that I was like lazy and not a hard worker, and so that kind of is where then I like pulled a lot of inspiration from for that song. But yeah, that one's got like a just classic like sad indie guitar riff throughout. I think the chorus is pretty like fun and catchy, and then it that song's like a bit of a journey. I'm really into that one. That just needs some like production stuff, and then that'll be good to go probably after Nancy Drew.
Hell yeah.
And then I have concepts on concepts after that one. So it's just about getting the instrumentals put together.
I'm stoked to hear both of them, Lazy Bones, especially after the way you described how it came to be. When you wrote it, or, you know, looking at it now, do you feel like writing a song about those kind of depressive moments where you're going through something, do you feel like it offers you a new perspective in the moment, or it does some healing, or how does it feel after you've written it, looking back on that situation?
Yeah, I think in the moment for me, it's pretty healing. And then after the fact, it's just like cathartic to like perform and just sing it or play it or whatever. Because that one is also just, you know, it's just statements about like being depressed and like how it makes you feel. And while it's a sad song, like I do think it just brings like a nice feeling, maybe knowing that that whole situation is over with, because it is like specific to me. You know, the song isn't super specific to that situation, but I just pull from that, I think, you know, when listening to it or playing it. And yeah, I guess afterwards it's a good feeling to just have like gotten all of that out, and now it's like out in the form of a song.
So what advice would you give to an aspiring artist who wants to release their first project?
That's tough, because it's a tough game to play, I guess, like the whole artistry thing and writing and releasing. But I guess just write as much as possible and just practice writing and try to not put too much pressure on yourself, because I think that that's when, you know, I start to feel like, oh, this is like so hard, I don't know if I can do this, you know, like cracking under just the pressure that maybe a lot of artists put themselves under, because it is a thing of like, you know, being an artist is like your job in a way, and you're your own boss. So everything you have to do for your artistry, like it does all fall on you and no one else. So, you know, I think just not putting too much pressure and just like remembering to have fun with it is the biggest advice I could probably give, because I have to like do that myself, so I don't want to like, you know, stop writing.
That's great advice. I mean, it's so easy for us to forget that the reason we started writing and performing and whatever is because it was fun, not because we wanted to do it as a job, right?
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, great advice. I do want to ask about just Philadelphia in general, because I've had a bit of a fascination with it over maybe a year or so, because I've interviewed a few people from Philadelphia, and in general, there are some artists I love there. Like I interviewed Rubber Band Gun, Popcoin, Pedazo de Carne con Ojo. I love Spirit of the Beehive and Body Meat, who are all there. And I even ended up going to record with Rubber Band Gun in Philadelphia. So I've had kind of a fascination with it. It seems like there's a lot of boundary pushing musicians out there. Do you feel like there's something special about Philly that cultivates this? What do you think are some key characteristics of a thriving music scene?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of what makes Philly so special is, I don't want to just chalk it up to its size, but it's a really cool community because it's big enough to where maybe you personally don't know everybody, but if you don't, one of your friends does, and there's just such a community in that. And I don't know, in my experience, most people in the DIY scene or just the music community in Philly in general are always trying to like give back. You know, you play a show for somebody and fill in and help them out, and they're like so ready to return the favor. There's just a lot of generosity that I think exists within the community. It's really, it's like a very welcoming place.
That's awesome. I recently moved to Athens, Georgia, which is not too far from Atlanta where I was. And it's a little bit smaller, and it feels like the community here, like you said, even if you don't know everyone personally, you do know someone who does. And everybody
Right.
is so happy to help and support each other and go to each other's shows and, build a lineup of a performance so that everybody can start playing. And it just seems like a really cool thing to be a part of that kind of community,
Totally. Yeah. So, because I imagine you can't really get that in New York. I'm sure you can within your like specific scene or genre to a degree, but yeah, that's what's really cool about Philly.
It seems a bit overwhelming. A place like New York or LA, where I was for a while, and it's almost like when there's too many people, you don't really know what to do or where to go.
Totally. Yeah, I can't even imagine. Philly is like, yeah, I've never lived in a bigger city than Philly, so.
Gotcha. And it is
Yeah.
big. It's certainly not a tiny town, you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's going to take us over to the last 5 here, where I'm just going to ask you 5 questions and we'll be out.
Cool. That sounds good.
All right. Number 1, in the studio or playing live?
Oh, that's tough, but I would probably say in the studio, just because I really enjoy the writing process. So but it's so hard because I really like playing live too, but because live is where you get to share the music with people in a way. But no, I have to say studio. I really just enjoy the writing process.
I have to agree. There's something about watching something you've created go from like nothing, like barely an idea, to like a almost tangible piece of art that you can share.
Yeah, it's a journey for sure, just start to finish.
And it usually changes and evolves in ways that you didn't expect.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, it's also just fun in the studio to like develop your sound too, because me only having one song out, I am still, even with Nancy Drew and like Lazy Bones and the next coming up songs, like I'm still kind of trying to figure out like exactly what the Splendi sound is, I guess. So it's tricky, but it's fun.
Right. Well, question number 2 is, what do you think is a perfect album front to back?
Oh, geez. I would have to say Lonerism by Tame Impala.
Nice.
It's honestly, it's probably one of the first like modern albums that really had an effect on me. Like, I think when I was in early high school or something, because I was like, oh, there's like new artists making like music this good. I just really love psychedelic rock too, so that was just, I was big into that, and just the messages throughout every song are super relatable and tell a good story.
That's a great choice. Lonerism was one of the bigger albums in my like late high school years that I just, as soon as I heard it, I like fell in love with it and listened to it all the time. Yeah. I saw that Tame Impala is going to play it at Desert Days, I think.
I saw that, yeah. Like, what, it is 10th year anniversary?
Yeah, 10 years, which is crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. I used to go home from school and like just put that album on and like take naps to it. Like, I just was always funny. Playing. Yeah.
Question number 3 is, who is your dream artist or producer to work with?
Jeez. Could I do artist and producer potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can name as many as you want, honestly.
Shoot. Artists would have to be, I want to say Wallace, Spilltab, Bia Badoobie, Clairo on there. Clairo definitely. Clairo's crazy because she's so versatile too. Like, she's got her like, you know, features in a lot of different genres and stuff, which I think is cool. No, but they're all great musicians and writers and artists. And then producer I would love to work with would be Marinelli. David Marinelli is a beast. And like every artist that I love, he like has a hand in their music, so that would be incredible.
He's in Los Angeles, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Because I've interviewed a good handful of people that know him or are around him, but I've listened to his stuff and it's sick, but I've never gotten the chance to interview him yet. But that would be great. Yeah,
his music is amazing too, like aside from his production, but him as an artist. I mean, it makes sense if you're a good producer, you're probably a good artist, but yeah. Him, like David Marinelli across the board is just like, would be a dream collaboration. So in addition to like almost all of his artists, so
let's set it up.
Yeah, please. That would be crazy.
Question number 4 is going to be, what's on your musical rotation right now?
Right now?
You can pull up your Spotify.
Can I?
Yes.
That would be dope. Let me do it. It's always so hard doing these like off the top of my head. Let me see what's on my on repeat. Oh, Critter. I've been listening to a lot of Critter.
I've never heard of them.
They're super interesting. You should check them out. Like very quirky indie music, pop and rock influences for sure, but they just dropped the song not that long ago called Mick Jagger, which is just like super catchy and like really odd in like the best way though. Spill Tab, Bia Badoobie. I've been listening to a lot of Cobra, which is like house-ish music, like super just dance heavy sort of stuff, which like isn't a genre I'm super into, but I just really like her voice over top of this stuff. So I've been listening to Cobra, a lot of Remy Wolf, just good like summer music to drive around to. I don't know why I didn't list Remy. See, it's always so hard off the top of my head. I would love to collab with Remy. Her writing is like hilarious and just like fun.
Yeah. I love Michael, that new song she put out.
Yeah, Michael is crazy.
It's awesome.
She's been all over my like TikTok For You page, like promoting it. It's just, and I'm like not complaining about it either. No. I love getting those. Annie DeRusso, who is like, I don't even want to say like up and coming, because I think she's not even up and coming anymore, because she's pretty like popping off. She just opened for Samia on like a tour, Samia is also incredible. There are a lot of people I've been listening to lately. Del Water Gap. I don't know. I could go on forever, but those are definitely the big ones at the moment.
Nice. Honestly, I ask that question just for selfish reasons, so that I can get new music to listen to, because it's so hard to like just scour Spotify to try to find stuff. Like it's much more helpful to get real recommendations. Yeah.
No, I agree.
So I'm going to check out Critter after this, Annie DeRusso, Samia, and it
might be, I might have said that wrong. It might be Samia. I think it might be Samia, but
Either way.
yeah.
Cool. Well, I'll definitely be checking all of them out. We only got one last question before we're done, and that's going to be, what is your favorite decade of music?
Whoa. Okay. That's tough. I definitely had like a 60s phase at one point. It's hard when you like have to, I don't know, like cross all the genres. I'm like going through it in my head right now.
The problem is there's great stuff and terrible stuff in every decade.
Yeah, I'm ruling out 90s because
Okay.
there was a lot of, I think, terrible stuff in the like late 90s.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I love 90s music, I think I might go for 80s just because of like
Interesting.
80s pop. I'm a huge fan of 80s pop because I like grew up on that from my mom. But also like new wave music in the 80s. I'm super into the kind of like synth heavy, like post-punk-ish kind of sound that was like during that time. So, and that's just at the moment. Like if you asked me a couple years ago, I would have been like 60s or like the 70s,
Right.
but I think it's 80s right now.
Yeah, it changes a lot for me as well. But you know what's funny is 80s is almost always the first one to go for me.
Interesting.
But only because the first thought I have is like hair metal. And I'm
Oh,
like,
shoot.
You know what I mean?
Some
But,
hair metal though, I can like enjoy some hair metal, like Twisted Sister.
right.
Like-
yeah.
It's stupid and it's like funny, but like there's something about it. I don't know.
It is, at least it's pretty self-aware of how
Right.
ridiculous it is, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
But usually my real answer is always the 2010s, and I think that's just because that's when I started getting into music, and is like that's when I started like really falling in love with it. So it was just the stuff that was coming out at the time,
Yeah.
which I think we're all cursed to feel that way about, you know, what we like is what we grew up listening to, basically.
Right. Yeah. I like that.
But 60s is also classic, I would say.
Oh, totally. That's a hard question. What do most people say?
That's interesting because honestly, it does change a lot. Like, I don't think that there is a common answer for that one. Sometimes maybe more people say like 2010s because I'm interviewing usually, you know, people our age, like early to mid 20s. So
Right.
they kind of have the same feeling or perspective I have, which is like loving the music you grow up on. But I mean, 60s is definitely classic. 70s, I'd say 80s is the least answered one.
Interesting. Okay.
But I can think of a handful of people who did say 80s. So that one's really up in the air. But I love asking studio or live because that one's really 50-50.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's not one, like it doesn't lean one way or the other. It really does
Yeah.
go 50-50.
Is it typically bands who say live?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
I should start like an Excel sheet and like start
Get all the
figuring out the
stats on
pie
it.
charts, yeah, the stats.
Right.
But yeah, it's usually 50-50 for that one.
Got you.
Cool. Well, Splendi, that is our time here on that note. Thank you for joining me for an episode. Everybody needs to go listen to your song Unoriginal, out now. Get ready for Nancy Drew. Lazy Bones coming out sometime in the future, hopefully soon. And yeah, thank you again for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. All right, I'll talk to you later.
See ya.
See you. Bye. Thank you again for joining me for another episode of On That Note with Parker Whirling. If you haven't yet, please make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, and you can even leave a comment down below to let me know who you're listening to. On that note, I'll see you guys next time.